All right, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our EtonHouse Parenting webinar, The Digital Dilemma. It's the real question, right? Are you in control of your child's screen time or is it controlling them? I'm Charmaine Yee and I'm really excited to be your moderator for this session. As a parent to a toddler myself, she's 21 months old. I can tell you managing screen time has been one of the biggest challenges that we face as parents. There is so much advice out there, but what really works? How do we balance it all? How do we do this while being a gentle parent, right? So today we have an incredible panel of educators who will be sharing their insights, research, and amazing practical tips that can help us parents navigate this digital landscape. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our wonderful speakers. We first have Amanda, Vice Principal and Curriculum Coordinator at EtonHouse Pre-School, Upper Bukit Timah. We also have Srishti, who is the Primary Curriculum Coordinator at Middleton International School. And last but certainly not the least, we've got Elmilia, who's our center leader at eBridge Preschool. Hello, ladies, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to add the positivity into our afternoon together. All right, so now we move on to our very first discussion point, right? How do we strike that balance? So let's start with the question that I'm sure is on every parent's mind. How do we strike that healthy balance when it comes to screen time? So to kick us off with numbers, Amanda, this is your area. This is where you have all the experience. What is the ideal screen time for children, especially in the early years and in primary school? And how does that vary by age? Please, Amanda.
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon to every one of you. And again, thank you so much for spending your chilly afternoon with us, especially since it's your precious lunch hour. Very quickly, I'm going to just run through some data that the MOH has actually shared with all our parents. Some of us have different responses. Some of us look at these numbers and start to panic, what am I supposed to do with these numbers? Am I supposed to strictly adhere to this? Is there no room to wiggle about, right? So let's just dive straight into the numbers. So as MOH has shared over here, below 18 months, of course, we would strongly encourage for all families to ensure that there's no screen time, even if you are having your meals and there are screens being turned on in the background. That is something that we really want to discourage. I think one of the questions that we received in the Q&A also asked about this. Is it okay if screens are in the background? I think that's something that MOH has kind of clearly communicated, that meal times should be a very meaningful activity. Children should be engaged. Meal times should be a sensory experience where children get to enjoy the taste, the textures of the food. So really ensuring that we do not leave screens on in the background is something that MOH has clearly communicated. Now, for our preschoolers from 18 months to 6 years old, the recommendation is that there should be no more than 1 hour of screen time a day outside of school. And if screen time is necessary, do try as much as possible to engage your child during this screen time process. So what that means is that we do not want any passive use of screen time, but an active use. So if you are watching something with your child, make sure that you're engaging in conversations with your child about it. All right, and if you have a child that is in primary school, between 7 to 12 years old, the recommendation is that there should be no more than 2 hours of screen time, except for days where there are schoolwork that has to be done online, or if there are home-based learning days. All right, and if possible at all, try to avoid giving children mobile devices. And with regard to mobile devices, it's not a complete no that you shouldn't be giving your children phones and things like that. But I think the key message here is with restricted usage of internet access, because we are quite aware that there are social media apps, and with the freedom to explore the internet space, we also start to question and wonder, who are our children interacting with? Yeah, so let me hand over the time back to Charmaine.
Now that's really helpful, right? But we all know that we wonder if our screen time with our children is really excessive, right? So, Srishti, I'm curious to know, what are some signs we should be looking out for?
So especially with younger children, as Amanda mentioned, that personal device, a mobile device which is up close, whether you're on the move or you are placed at home with a larger screen in front of you, for children, younger children, it's very easy to pick up on physical symptoms of red eyes. You will find them blinking a lot more. And when they are much younger, the whole stimulus of being able to blink automatically can get hampered when they get fixated on a screen, which will cause excessive watering and be harmful in the long run. So just be mindful that when you're seeing that your child is not blinked enough, there is watery eyes there, you encourage them to take that little break there. In older children, the prolonged screen exposure, whether it is a laptop, a television screen, or their own personal devices, could reflect as frequent headaches or blurry vision. It may not just be eyes getting weaker, because sometimes it does happen as they age. It could also be excessive screen use. So look out for those things. If you're finding that your child doesn't really want to go out, it's a great day, friends are out, and I want to watch this show, it could be another symptom that it is a little more than required. So use that cue for yourselves to see, how can I make the outdoors more enticing for my child? In toddlers, if you're finding that they're struggling to go to sleep, they're taking longer times, usually after a tiring day, it's fairly easy. And there's a very slight distinction between when they are really tired and not able to sleep, and when they're actually not able to sleep because there is that excessive screen that's stimulated them. So as a parent, you would best read their body language and be able to analyze that. So just be mindful, if you're seeing that pattern, it could be something that is manifesting because of excessive screen time. You're finding them irritable. They're not as expressive with, I am upset because of this. So take that as a physical cue. They're more irritable because their attention span or their ability to process their emotions might be getting hampered or not as developed. It is something that they may have carried from a story they've just watched, which may have been something to do with a certain anxious moment there. It may not be big for an adult brain. For a younger child, it may have a larger impact. So look out for those things. Look out for things like not being able to hold attention for longer. 5 minutes and I'm done. Yes, younger children have shorter attention spans, but if you see that time limit shortening, then that could be another cue for you to look out for. Are they choosing to be on a screen or on a device, or as opposed to just going out and being with friends? So cumulatively look at all of these factors and maybe use that to relook at how much screen are we exposing them to.
Thank you so much. Now, that's given us a lot to think about. And I know for us as parents, we worry about the content quality. Okay, they're on their devices, but how do we know that when they do have the screen time, it's actually beneficial and it's age appropriate? Amanda, maybe you could help us with that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's quickly dive into content quality, because I think this is something that families are very mindful of. And I think based on today's poll alone, I think it's wonderful to see that actually we've got half of our audience here who are very aware of balancing screen time at home. So that's wonderful. So now when we look at the quality of content, let's consider these 5 factors, right? So first of all, let's look at the age appropriateness. Secondly, educational value. Thirdly, positive messages and role models. Fourthly, diversity and inclusion. And lastly, minimal commercial influence. So when we look at age appropriateness, we think about ensuring that themes, language, and the complexity actually suits with our audience's developmental stage. So this week alone, I think last Thursday, Dogman, a movie, an animated movie, has just been released in the theaters. And to be honest, I think my 6-year-old child is actually very excited to head into the theaters to watch the show. But I also have a 4-year-old child at home. But when I think about these two audiences, I think about whether the language that DocMan is using, and whether the theme that is being presented, whether or not it is appropriate. So really, I would gladly bring a primary school child to the theatres to watch DocMan, but I'm very hesitant to bring my 3 turning 4-year-old, because really the storyline, while it is very comedic and entertaining, there are certain scenes that have been deemed as rude humor. So if you look at the movie ratings, they did not rate it as G, they rated it as PG. So rightly so, because they do realize that, oh, there are certain elements of rude humor that might not be appropriate for a 3 turning 4-year-old. And when we look at the educational value, the second factor, we must think about what are the cognitive growth opportunities over here. Are there any moral lessons that are being transmitted? Are they also developing children's cultural awareness through these videos? Thirdly, I think when we look at the positive messages and role models, I think it's really essential that the content that we watch encourages good behavior. It helps to develop healthy relationships. It helps to avoid harmful stereotypes. And fourthly, we have diversity and inclusion. So whether or not it is prioritized, whether they are able to represent different cultures, and even looking at gender, I think we recently just celebrated International Women's Week, whether or not they portray women in a stereotypical way, or do they celebrate women as individuals who are able to complete any task given. So looking at abilities and looking at identities and whether they are respectfully covered in this content. And lastly, when we look at minimal commercial influence, I was just joking with the ladies. I said, could you imagine if we were to watch Peppa Pig and Peppa Pig were to advertise for McDonald's, right? And I know that for a lot of our children, Peppa Pig is a wonderful role model, right? Because she looks at the family values, and you know, there are some positive moral values that are embedded within each video. But if Peppa Pig were to advertise for McDonald's, you would imagine that our children would be telling us to have McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So because children naturally want to imitate a role model that they look up to, right? So I think that these are some of the quality, some of the factors that we need to consider when selecting good quality content. Now, in addition to looking at good quality content, I think I also would like to raise up 2 points that would also help you in selecting videos. Okay, so these 2 other additional points would be the choice of colors and this thing called frames per second. Now, on the screen over here, you can see that there are 2 frames of school buses. I think the one on the left is actually very widely known amongst families. It is the famous Coco Melon's Wheels on the Bus. Now, the one on the right that you see over here, it's actually by a story title called Barefoot Books, and this subtitle is actually called We All Go Traveling By. Now, when you look at the choice of colors, you would notice that the one on the left frame chooses similarly yellow, green, and blue, but it is the tone in which it is selected. It is very vivid and very bright. As compared to the one on the right, still yellow, greens, and blues, very primary colors selected, but less overwhelming, right? And if you were to compare both screens, you will also notice that I actually had quite a difficult time trying to grab a screenshot of the frame on the left. Reason being that the Coco Melon actually selects deliberately decides to use a 48 to 60 frames per second, as compared to Barefoot Books, which uses a slower animation, similar to that of a stop motion video. So this is really to communicate that, hey, if we were to use very high stimulating colors and very fast-paced videos, it could be visually overstimulating for our children. And of course, the children would be receiving these visual stimulations and would then be a little bit more addicted to the screens and would want even more screen time. Right, and I'm just very quickly going to flash through some videos that we found online to be appropriate, and I think after this webinar, we'll be sending these slides to you. So feel free to take note of this after the webinar as well. Yeah, so for toddlers, 1.5 to 3 years old, these you will notice that we have got Bluey, Pocoyo, and Sarah and Duck. And very similarly, all three shows choose very pastel, soft tone colors. Now, when we also look at the preschoolers, what are appropriate shows for them to watch? We also think about Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Curious George, Blue's Clues, and Octonauts. So these shows, not only are they very mindful about the colors and the frames per second, we also notice that these videos actually talk about emotional intelligence. They even have problem-solving skills and are very family-friendly. All right, and then for our primary school children, we've got Magic School Bus and Storyboards. So these are pretty educational. They are science-focused, and they also talk about literacy skills when presenting this information. Okay, so not to worry. I think we received a comment in the chat. You have missed out some of the video names. Not to worry. After the webinar, I think this information will be shared with you via email as well. Okay.
Now that we know that we can actually make learning fun and have high quality animation that is still engaging, we know that what's important is also setting limits. And I know that that's a lot easier said than done. So I'm going to hand the time over to Elmilia right now, because I'm curious to know what some practical ways us parents can manage and monitor screen time effectively without making it too much of a daily battle. Elmilia, your help, please.
Hi everyone. Yes, I understand that as parents myself, I do struggle a little bit with, at the initial stage when it comes to setting limits to screen time with my children. So what I'm sharing with you is based on my own personal experience and, some feedback that I've received from, fellow parents as well. Of course, most importantly is we need to get everyone involved in setting limits or setting rules. All right. So although as parents, we know what is best for the children, but it's advisable to get the children involved. So get the children involved, have a discussion as a family. And when it comes to setting rules for device usage at home, be sure to discuss the rewards as well as the consequences. All right. And what we can do to ensure that this is effective is to enforce these rules consistently. All right. So that is number one. So once you have had that discussion with everyone in the family, and the rules have to involve parents as well. All right. Because we are role models. We cannot enforce this on the children, and yet we, watch our phone at night before bedtime and things like that. All right. So everybody in the family has to be involved and has to agree on it. And once it's agreed, it's good to make it visible. All right. Make the agreement visible for everyone's reference. So you can put it up with visual aids, especially for very young children. All right. It's good to have visual aids when you create that agreement and put it somewhere for easy reference. So what I am currently using and what some other parents are also using, we do use technology, to help us in managing our children's screen time. So there are apps available such as Family Link, all right? And I believe for iPhone, they have also certain apps that you can use. For my family, we use Family Link, all right? And we also use Google Home to help us. So these two are the most effective methods that I've discovered, and I'm currently still using with my children. My children, they are now in primary 5. All right, I have a set of twins. Okay, so they can get together to, battle it out with us in terms of, another 5 more minutes, oh, we are not done yet, and things like that. They can negotiate with us. So what you can do is you can download those apps, all right? And the apps actually, let you set some screen time limits. You can schedule downtime on your child's device. You can control the content restrictions. You can also limit the app usage. Additionally, you can also monitor the games that your children are playing. What did they download? What did they browse? And what the type of content that they view using their devices. All right. So what I did with my family is that not only did we set some rules, but we also set some procedure, I would say, before they can access their screen time. So for example, before they can watch any videos or play games, they will need to set the limit. So they will tell Google to set set an alarm at 2 p.m., for example. And based on our agreement, once the alarm rings, it's their responsibility to put it away. So I empower my children to take that responsibility. They will set the alarm. They will be the one that will switch off the phone or their iPad once the alarm rang. So it's important to give them that ownership. Even very young children, preschoolers, this is something that you can empower your children to do. Because if you are the one who set it for them and tell them, then most probably they would want to battle with you. They will say, oh, 5 more minutes. Oh, I'm not done yet. Or they will just throw a tantrum and refuse to put down the device. So it's best to give them the responsibility. So my children will set the alarm. They will be the one responsible to put away the device. As parents, of course, we need to monitor. All right, we don't just depend on electronic monitoring. We need to be physically there to monitor, to observe what are they watching, how does this impact them in terms of physical, emotional, and whether, they sometimes the children may get confused based on the content they're watching. So if you are being present, you can help to ensure a healthier and safer screen time experience for your children.
So I'm curious to know, right, ladies, Amanda, Srishti, just jump on in, right? Do routines actually help in your cases with your children, or that of instances that you've seen, perhaps? Or how do we role model on, as parents as well, right?
Yeah, I think routines definitely help. And what I do in my family is to ensure that screen time is fixed on a certain day. So what I do is I need my downtime over the weekends because it's full 24/7 with the children. So what I do is I try to schedule screen time on Saturday, particularly in the afternoons when my children are rejecting naps and they really need their downtime, and so do I. So what I would do is I would put a routine in whereby they are done with their lunch, they get about half an hour of screen time or 1 episode or 1 movie. And then when it's done, they will push the boundaries, like what Elmilia was saying. They push boundaries all the time, but that's their job, right? That's the job of a child. They push boundaries, but I think it's really important for us to hold fast to these boundaries. Yeah.
I think it's also good for us, as it forces us to put our phones away in a different room as well. And it forces us to also sort of wind down with them, I feel. And that's what I've noticed with mine anyway. So we talked about balance, but let's go a little bit deeper, right? What actually happens here when children have too much screen time? Srishti, going to be handing the time over to you because I'm curious to know from a developmental perspective, what are some of the physical, emotional, or perhaps cognitive effects that we can observe?
Thank you, Charmaine. The most important thing for us to reiterate at this point is when MOH has shared those guidelines of saying 0 screen time for a certain age group or saying 1 hour screen time, it is heavily researched back. It's been studied, it has been tested, and these recommendations come from that. So when you see someone younger than 18 and they're encouraging you in a very strong way to make sure we limit that time to 0, is because there is enough evidence to say there is delayed language development. These young ones that we have, our children, are developing their language skills, their understanding of language, their ability to communicate effectively through our interactions. And when that communication is hijacked by a screen, where even though it's passive, the depth of their ability to understand a language or express themselves gets hampered significantly. You have a child in a stroller, whether you're in a mall or a zoo, you might be getting from point A to point B. But if it is with a personal device, it may not be a phone, it might be an iPad with a fairly big screen. However, It's holding them back from exploring the surroundings. We need to give them the opportunity to observe what's around them. They need to be curious about what's around them. And that lack of curiosity will hamper how they understand the world. That sense making happens actively when they're engaging with every sense beyond a screen. Engaging with people, engaging with the visuals around them, paying attention to the sounds that happen around them, paying attention to what they see and what it makes them wonder with it. So we need to very mindfully do that because our children are losing that curiosity and ability to understand the world. Another research that was conducted largely in the toddler age group for children was seeing a social withdrawal, not wanting to interact with other friends because they find it challenging. They haven't had enough interactions with them. And yes, for a toddler, for someone in the age group of 6 to 12 years old, the more they interact socially, the more they develop their ability to understand these are my boundaries, this is how I can get my way. We need to afford them those opportunities. And screens and excessive screen time is hampering a development of this ability in them. There have been lots of positivities with the whole screen use. As educators ourselves, as parents, we find that our students, our children can teach us so many things. It has to do with the development of their visual processing areas of the brain. And it's been a great development in that sense, in the positive aspect of it. However, while the visual processing has developed, research has also shown that the frontostriatal circuitry, the part of our brain which works towards inhibiting control and understanding reward processing, that has diminished. And that has led to children not being able to self-regulate themselves, some emotional anxiety, dysregulation, and also impacting how they're sleeping poorer. So these are some of the long-term impacts that has come to front with use of screen times beyond the current recommended limits.
Srishti, you spoke about sleep, and I think this is a huge concern, right? It's great for development for our children. So how does prolonged screen exposure impact our children's sleep patterns and overall well-being, and what can we do as parents about it? Elmilia.
Screen time undeniably disrupts children's sleep, all right, leading to poor sleep quality. It takes 30 to 60 minutes for a child to fall asleep after they put away the device. Okay, this is because of the blue light emitted from the screen. And the blue light actually suppresses melatonin. As we know, it's the hormone that regulates sleep. So the body needs time to restore the melatonin level and help the child transition into a relaxed state. Right? So the longer the child uses the device, the more time their brain actually needs to wind down. And especially if the child was watching some fast-paced or emotionally stimulating content, this can make it harder for the child to relax. And if screen time isn't managed well, children would actually experience frequent night waking, fatigue, irritability the next day. So too much screen time does impact children's well-being in all areas of development. And we, based on research, we do know that excessive screen time may lead to addiction that require professional intervention. So what can parents do to help? There are 4 steps, all right? Number 1 is you need to start establishing healthy screen habits. So set clear screen rules, all right? So you should have at least 1 hour of screen-free rule before bedtime. So 1 hour before your child's bedtime, it's best not to watch anything. All right. You can also utilize, parental controls like Family Link to enforce downtime on your child's devices, where automatically by the time that you set for the device to switch off, it will switch off. And instead of using screen to help your child relax and fall asleep, Do encourage relaxing bedtime routines such as reading, storytelling, listening to calming music, or just have a simple conversation with your child. Secondly, please keep devices out of the bedroom, because if it's there, it's seen. Most probably, the child would want to access it. All right. So parents can optimize the child's sleep environment with low lighting, comfortable temperature, calming music, soft bedding. But please don't bring any form of device, even the television, into your child's bedroom. Okay. And thirdly, you need to ensure a consistent bedtime routine. I think the magic here, when we talk about helping your child set some boundaries, helping have control over your child's screen time, the magic word here is consistency. All right. So the same is important to have a consistent bedtime routine, and that routine should never involve any form of device. All right. And finally, parents, we need to walk the talk, and we need to model healthy screen habits ourselves. So prioritize screen-free family time and encourage a lot of outdoor activities to balance digital exposure. So before bedtime, like what I've suggested, ensure there is no screen nearby. And even if you're going to put your child to sleep, please do not bring your handphone into your child's bedroom. Yeah. So we need to model it ourselves. And by taking these small steps, we can help the children enjoy screen time more responsibly and ensuring that they get enough rest and the well-being that they need. Yes,
You
Charmaine,
know,
back to you.
Amelia, when I read that list, I'm looking at the screen thinking all of that needs to be applied to me. I need to keep the phone away. I need to have 1 hour no screen time before bedtime. So a lot of these practices, I completely agree with you, need to be modeled by us first, and I'm definitely trying my best to do that as well. Now, we've heard many parents say that they notice changes in their children's attention span in particular and behavior when screen time increases. Now, Amanda, I'm curious to know, is there a real connection between screen time and behavioral challenges like, say, anxiety or social difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And when I think about behavioral challenges, I really think about these two categories and these two contexts. So these two contexts would be school and home, right? So let's dive into school as a context first. So when we look at school, and because we are at EtonHouse, I think for us at EtonHouse, we use inquiry-based approach for learning. And so because we do inquiry-based learning, we're very big on collaboration. And some people say that, what's wrong with using a screen, right? There is interaction when you use screens. We send text, we send emojis. This is a form of interaction. But the question, I guess, we need to think deeper about would be, if we were to just rely on screens, does interaction equate to connection? Now, if you were to look up the definitions of interaction and connection, we would actually see a very slight difference. So interaction is actually just an act of communicating or engaging with someone, right? If you were to send an emoji, hey, great job today. But a connection really does signify a deeper, a more meaningful and an emotional relationship that goes beyond the surface level interactions. So I think the question that we need to think about is, if connection does not happen, right? If we are just interacting with each other, giving each other emojis, can our children learn from one another? Because at EtonHouse, I think our children take charge of their own learning. They come in with their prior knowledge and perspective of things. And that's what we want children to be, right? We want them to be curious, to share their own thoughts and ideas. So right now at EtonHouse Pre-School at Upper Bukit Timah, our children are actually inquiring about community helpers within the school. And the children actually came in, they started the year with a certain amount of understanding. And they had this assumption, right, that support staff, our community helpers, only include two people, the security uncle and the maintenance uncle. And that's fine, right? We all come in with our own perspectives based on our observations. Maybe when daddy drives the car in, that's the only people they see first thing in the morning, right? But if children do not have this ability to connect with others and engage in perspective taking, where other children might say, oh, but I saw auntie preparing breakfast this morning, right? Would they be able to be open-minded to other ideas? And another skill that children need to actively develop would be active listening. So it's not just listening, 1 year in and 1 year out, but it's listening and then also being able to critically question. Oh, okay, you saw auntie. So what does that make her? Is she a community helper or is she not? What does this role involve, right? So you need to be actively listening, critically questioning what you hear, and then coming up with your own conclusions. So I think this is something that we want to encourage in the school setting. And very often, I think, even in the Q&A we saw, yes, children might look like they are paying attention when they are looking at screens, but really you are just visually stimulating them. But whether or not connection is taking place, that is a deeper question we need to think about. And then now when we think about the home context, I can share with you that personally, I have seen these adverse effects because I think when Srishti and Elmilia were sharing about how children push boundaries, I was just nodding my head tremendously because that is true. Like my 6-year-old and 4-year-old children are constantly testing boundaries. And as I mentioned earlier, I think at home, what we try to do is to keep it to Saturday afternoons, right? And I noticed that sometimes when on Saturday afternoons, if I were to allow screen time, and I, as an adult, fail to do the prep work, I noticed that there will be a lot of meltdowns. There will be a lot of demands for one more. And if you look at the zones of regulation, children very quickly, from being green, calm and relaxed, they jump straight into red where they are angry and frustrated, and they even act out sometimes, right? So we notice that sometimes the passive use of screens can be very addictive because children are receiving sensory stimulation. And the matter of fact is that they're not working for it at all. They're just sitting down, watching. And if you were to think about an age where screens weren't a common sight, children have to actually work for it. If you want sensory input, you've got to run, you've got to jump, you've got to scream at the playground. But now children, they do not have to burn a single calorie. They're just sitting in front of a screen, enjoying the entertainment without any form of physical output. So I think the question we need to think about is, it is very tricky as an adult to manage screen time at home. But I think as adults, we need to think about whether we as adults are able to tolerate the meltdowns that come with it. I think we all need to come to an agreement, a mutual agreement that children are going to push boundaries. Children are going to have meltdowns and tantrums when the video comes to an end. But as an adult, if we have this expectation that they are going to push boundaries, but we are going to hold firm to these boundaries, we would actually be pretty calm, cool, and we, when we are calm, the children also notice that, oh, I'm definitely not going to get additional screen time, right? So children would then be able to understand that mommy is not going to extend screen time further. And you will notice that as time goes by, the first few times might be tricky because they have had that experience of pushing it and then getting one more video. But if you're very consistent with it, you will notice that children know mommy is not going to extend any further. And that is something that's going to be a consistent routine in this family. Yeah. Other behavioral challenges that you might think about, I think we have also covered it a little earlier. So poor sleep quality, poor attention span, especially in the school setting where boring written work is presented, because not everything is on screens, right? So that's something that we need to think about as well. How do we balance that out? Yeah.
I mean, this is indeed eye-opening, right? Because I agree with you. It's so easy when our child just goes one more, and you just want to avoid that meltdown. It's a lot easier to just go, okay, here's another video, right? So these are indeed eye-opening insights, and if you're watching and nodding along, definitely, I mean, I am too. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how we can take screen time into something that's positive. How can we use screens to enhance our learning? Screens aren't the enemy, right? Because if we use them right, they can actually be powerful learning tools. So let's explore this side of the conversation. Elmilia, I'm curious to know what ways we can use digital tools or perhaps apps to support our children's learning in a meaningful way.
So for preschool age children, digital tools and apps can be a valuable learning aid when we use them appropriately. They should enhance rather than replace hands-on experiences, and digital tools can help build children's foundational skills through interactive, engaging, and age-appropriate activities. So there are benefits of using digital tools and apps, right? One of it is it helps to promote active engagement and interaction because it turns passive screen time into active learning experiences and interaction through interactive storytelling, problem-solving activities, movement-based activities, or games where children need to touch, drag, speak, respond. So it could serve as active engagement. Secondly, support early literacy and language development. Right? Apps with interactive stories, rhyming activities, phonics exercises, they do help the children develop early reading and language skills, especially those apps with voice-enabled features. They allow children to listen, repeat, practice pronunciation, strengthen their verbal communication. And number 3, introduce early maths concepts. So digital activities do encourage children to explore counting, number recognition, patterns, basic problem solving in an engaging way. And number 4, encouraging creativity and self-expression. So there are digital platforms that allow children to draw, create music, tell stories, build virtual structures, and they foster creativity in children. So these experiences do support fine motor skill development. And as children learn to navigate the touch screen, they trace letters, they use digital drawing tools as well. And number 5, it does support social emotional learning, where children recognize emotions, they can practice empathy, understand social situations through storytelling and role-playing activities. So digital experiences can encourage cooperative play, where the children interact with family members or their peers to solve challenges together. And number 6, it also enhances critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Right? So puzzle-based digital activities encourage the children to think critically, recognize patterns, and make decisions in an engaging way. Now, we have all the hype about coding. So this is something that, you can introduce to your children. There are simple coding games or sequencing activities that would help children have basic logic reasoning skills and help children understand cause and effect. And lastly, digital tools or apps, they do provide personalized and adaptive learning experiences because they adjust to the children's learning pace, strengths, and areas that the child needs improvement. They offer customized support. So children will, progress at their own speed while staying engaged and motivated. So there are benefits to using digital tools and apps. And how can we maximize these benefits when it comes to children's learning? So parents should encourage interactive participation. So when your child is using device, you need to be present. You need to know what your child is doing, what program or apps or show or games that your child is engaged in. Do encourage them to be interactive. All right. And you also need to balance digital learning with real world experiences. All right. So outdoor hands-on activity, social interaction is still very crucial for children's development. All right. So you need to ensure there's a balance. There's not too much of the digital learning and less of the real world experiences. And engage with your child by asking questions while they are, having their screen time. Discuss about the content, reinforce lessons outside of digital tools. So if your child is using an app about patterning, so when you bring your child to the supermarket to buy groceries, you can talk about, let's look at how the groceries or the food items are sorted. Is there a pattern here that we can identify? Remember, you learn about patterning from the app that we use before we come out. So how can we help the children make the connection from what they learn using the device to the real world context? And finally, set time limits. Regardless of how great the app is, how excellent the digital tool is for your children's learning, there should be a limit. All right. So when used intentionally, yes, digital tools can support your children's cognitive, social, creative development, making learning engaging and meaningful.
Now, I love those ways that we can maximize the benefits of learning. So what I picked up on was the balance, right? So let's bring it all together. Srishti, if you could help us with that. What are some creative ways we can blend online learning with offline activities so that our children get a well-rounded experience?
So thank you, Charmaine. What I am picking up from all our lovely expert speakers today, we're looking at intentionality when we're bringing something. We're looking at modeling those healthy habits. We're also making it more purposeful, not just a passive means of interaction. So some of the resources that come teacher recommended, research-backed, is what I'm going to talk us through. A platform such as GoNoodle, they have short interactive videos which use a lot of popular songs and well familiarized tunes for learners to bring in learning such as syllables or getting them up and moving together. So I would encourage parents, join your child in that. You are modeling healthy screen habits in not just putting away your screen in certain ways, but also using that screen in the right way. So you do that, build that connection with your child when you're going through one little movement activity that is screen time, but yet actively interacting. Use websites such as Wonderopolis or Kids Should See This. These are both websites that have teacher curated materials that are student friendly as well. So when you have your learner with you and you have your child with you, be curious about the world together. If they have a wondering when they've seen, why does a spinning top keep spinning and then suddenly stop? See if you can explore answers of that together. And these two websites are great ways to look at it. Help them understand the videos that are on it or the language that is on it. Use that active communication to use our screen time more effectively and purposefully. Make it meaningful. For older students who may have a personal device or are allowed to use some, on your exploratory walk, use your Google Lens or some nature-based apps that come. Identify the plants and animals in your neighborhood. What is it? It could be a little bug, but what does it mean? Observe, look at it closely. Think of all the observations, discuss it together, bring back home. Use apps such as Procreate to recreate what you saw. When Google Lens is giving you some information, use that information to record it. So you're balancing your real world interaction, you're enhancing that experience with something that's been afforded to you on a digital platform, and you're still learning the world. You're honing your observation skills and you're also honing your personal understanding of the world. So use apps like that. We have some wonderful ones like Epic, and I recall Elmilia mentioning earlier that some of them come with sound and the pronunciation that helps with your language development. There are platforms like Epic and Storyline Online that have read alouds on them. These will help support our learners in understanding how to say it right. What does it mean? Make that visual connection to the illustration in the book, to the word and the sound. Once you're done with that, let's go back, create some puppets, act it out. So make it an activity that extends beyond what's been just done on it. That'll help them develop their expression in more than just a verbal way. So use that. For older students, if you've heard a story, if you've watched a movie together, you've had an interaction with it, encourage them to use things like Canva or storyboard that, where they're able to create their own stories or recreate or represent the story that they've just been exposed to on a digital format. Whether they write it out, whether they create illustrations online, it's helping them make their interaction more purposeful. I recall, I think, Elmilia and Amanda both saying that there are certain ways where we can use it in an adaptive manner. So when a platform gives us access to that, and our platform such as Prodigy for math, it's adaptive to each student. It's not a benchmarked, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3. which is something which is very addictive for children who play games online. But Prodigy, a platform such as that, allows them to see I'm progressing, but that progression is catered to them, where they're at, what their ability is. For further older students, we could look at how we can use ChatGPT. Brainstorm, you put AI to work, let it come up with ideas of a social problem that you have. What solutions does it come up with? Then have your child look at it and say, which one of these actually are workable in my context? Does this actually solve the problem? Is this something that I can apply? Will it work for me? That'll allow them to harness their critical thinking skills and develop that further. So we are using a platform that is available to us digitally, but we're also making sure there's a real world connect there. For those who are more interested in picking up languages, there are apps such as Duolingo or Rosetta. Use that digital time to pick up a new language. We are surrounded by such diverse nationalities within us, within our classes and within our schools. That is something we could enhance our interpersonal skills as well. So there's just some of the websites and some resources that can help make our digital interactions, our screen times meaningful, purposeful, some ways to facilitate interaction between each other as well as with the world around us.
Thank you so much, Srishti. Now we have time for one, maybe two questions. So let's start with the one about screen use during meal times. Here's a question. My kid likes to watch TV and eat food at the same time. I understand this is not ideal, but how can I reduce it? So screen time during meal times. Ladies, this is open to the floor, so anyone can feel free to unmute yourself and answer the question.
I'm happy to take that one. When I was doing the research into how the long-term impact, one of the things that did come across was the importance of eating as a mindful activity, especially for young children. The brain is still developing. When they are taking that time to explore the taste, the change of taste as they're chewing through, exploring the textures of it as they engage with the food, it helps develop neural pathways in the brain. And this is something that goes towards their understanding of, now I am full. And this needs to be a repeated activity through the ages. When we introduce another sensory input, for example, just a song playing in the background or a TV running in the background, it hampers the sensory development. So we need to, from a science-based perspective, be very mindful of that. You could, as a family, have a little conversation on getting them to refocus, like, how many times did you have to chew that prawn before it stopped tasting savory and started tasting sweet? Or little questions like, what do you feel when you take that spoon of ice cream in your mouth? Where do you feel it? So those little questions that you can have with them when you're on that dinner table or when they're having their meal and you're sitting with them will really help in encouraging this neural development. And meal times need to be family times. We need to invest them in conscious conversations. If our children are growing older, have a conversation about the challenges you faced in the day. How did you overcome them? What did they face? How did they feel about the day? This also goes towards their social and emotional development. So from a research-backed perspective, take that screen out.
And can I just add on to that? Maybe you can get your child involved during the preparation and the serving of the food. All right. So if the child prepares the food, the child will look forward to, enjoying the food. And this is where it will generate some conversation. The child will start to say, oh, that I roasted the chicken, I put it in the oven and things like that. And get your child to serve their own food. And maybe you can encourage them to be creative. For example, what can you create using the pasta and the broccoli? Can the broccoli become eyes and the pasta, what does it look like? Does it look like a face? So when your child is engaged during mealtime, then most probably your child would not look for devices.
I like that. And there's so much to learn. Ladies, we only have time for that one question, so we're just going to wrap up. But perhaps, Amanda, any last thoughts you wanted to add on?
I just had one final tip for this parent, because I know how difficult it must be for this parent to, and it's really a great step for them to even acknowledge that this is not an ideal situation and they want to work around it. So kudos to you guys for wanting to make this change. But something that I would recommend for you guys is perhaps to start with this change at home first, because I can imagine how challenging it must be if you are out in the restaurant and perhaps this has already been a habit that you've started at home. So maybe start with this practice at home. And again, like what we've shared across the last hour, stay firm with your boundaries, be prepared that there will be meltdowns. There might be even resistance in telling you, I'm not going to eat if you don't give me the screen time, right? This is something that you have to be ready for. But we are here, EtonHouse teachers are here at the back cheering you on. So try it out at home. And then when you are ready and this positive habit has been instilled, then think about moving outwards and trying it out in the restaurants or even in the hawker centers out there.
Yeah, that's a great idea for sure. And we have to be prepared for that. I think I agree with you. Once we are prepared for perhaps a meltdown or for our child to be a bit more emotional, we ourselves are ready for it. So we react in the appropriate way, right, ladies? A great conversation this afternoon. We've covered a lot of ground, from setting healthy screen time limits to understanding the impact and finding ways to turn that screen time into a positive learning opportunity. Thank you so much, ladies, for your time, for sharing your insights, and of course, for all of you for choosing to spend your precious lunchtime with us. We hope that you've walked away with some useful strategies and a little bit more confidence in managing this digital dilemma. And now, before we go, please do check out the parenting section on EtonHouse websites. And you can find it at parenting.etonhouse.edu.sg. We also have that QR code on your screens right now. You're welcome to scan that right now too. And with the website that you go to, you can access the ebook guides, the podcast on all things parenting. Also, I know a lot of us were curious to know about the websites that were shared today, or the recommended channels or things that we can watch with our children. We will be sending a recording of today's session via email. And if you'd like to, you can listen to that again or share it with your fellow parents. So thank you again for joining us today. I'm Charmaine, and I look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Take care, stay safe, and we look forward to more of such discussions. And happy parenting. We'll see you very soon. Take care.